some reason I feel like this always happens. A lot of nuts in the exhaust here. Yep, that's all engine oil. That's awesome. Just picked up the two John Deere 2150 utility tractors. I'll show you guys these things, and then I gotta find a home for them so I can get working on them here. Well, the home is here, just not where they sit right now, because this is kind of, well, in the middle of my driveway yard. I haven't confirmed the serial number to see what year they are, but I believe this model was made from about 1982 to 86 or somewhere in that time period, so we can assume these are within that era. Now I do have the side panels for this one in the back of my truck, so I got to get that out. These are two identical 2150s, both in, well, they both need some work, and I'm not sure what type of work. This one looks like it's in better shape. It's got more grease on it, so that's actually kind of a good sign. It was probably the last working tractor. Somebody robbed the starter out of this, as well as that one. I have no idea if these tractors work, if they don't work. This one appears like it's stuck in neutral, while the other one appears that it's stuck in gear. That one has no seat. This one needs a seat, but seat's not really a big deal here. That's pretty cheap. Everything else, that's the big deal. This one, I was told the engine spins over. It does have a stack on it. And if we look down in there, I don't know if you guys can see, but it doesn't look like there's anything in there. This one, well, that one's seen better days. This one I was told the engine was stuck on it, so I'm not sure if we're going to be able to do anything with it. But we'll at least try, right? I don't know what's going on here. Last service date. Looks like that says 10/3/04. If that's the case, it hasn't worked in quite a while. 20 years. I don't know what's going on with the hydraulics down here. So these things are kind of turds, but that's what we buy here. This one at least has good wheels on it. The other one had some rusty rear wheels, so at the very least maybe we can make one decent tractor here. I'm hoping we'll be able to get this guy going here, but only time will tell. Start wrenching on him at some point. We're getting pretty close to the winter now, so I'm not sure. I don't have a shop or anything here. I just have that silo in my little shed. Not something I'm going to be working out of. Definitely not that silo, let me tell you. I'm going to find a spot to shove these guys. They might sit over the winter, they might not, but by the time this video comes out, it really won't matter because you'll see what happens. That's it for now. Come back to you when we get something rolling on these things. All right, well, today I'm going to spend a little bit of time working on these, and I think my first priority here is going to be this locked up one. I'm going to try and pull the exhaust manifold off of it and spray some lubricant down into the cylinders as best as I can and maybe see if it'll free up. I really don't know anything about these tractors. This one's locked up. I did spin this one over. I put a bar in where the starter goes and it spins extremely freely, which is also concerning. So hopefully we can get one of these going at the very least, but might as well start with the worst one, I guess. I don't know if that's the right way to do it. All right, now I gotta get the muffler off here. Maybe I can just pop the whole manifold and muffler right off. You don't see this every day. A lot of nuts in the exhaust here. And I know I can only assume one of these valves is open because that's probably why this thing is locked up. Probably have to get a pick in there to get the rest, but pretty bad. I'm gonna go with this cylinder being that it's wet. This is gonna be our culprit here. Well, I'm gonna get these all cleaned up and we'll get back to you. So this first cylinder is in really bad shape. second and the third, not so much. But that first one is just filled with mud. Now I'm gonna spray some of the magic stuff in there. I guess if water can get in, so can oil. And we'll let that, guess now we'll just let it sit for a little while and well, I drug this thing forward, drug it backwards, put a bar down in the starter hole, and it just appears to be locked up. I drug it in gear. Obviously, tried a bunch of different gears and just couldn't get the engine to break free. So, I don't know. I think I'm gonna walk away from this one and focus more on this one because I think this tractor has a chance. You know, it's covered in grease, which is, I guess, a good sign, comparatively speaking. And this one, all the functions seem to work. Everything moves up here. Nothing seems to be locked up short of the, this must be the fuel shutoff. But the throttle actually functions. The fuel filter actually looks in fairly good shape. Now, looking into the radiator cap here, this is where I believe the problem lies on this tractor. But it looks pretty mucky. You can kind of see that reflection there. So I'm thinking this tractor might actually have a blown head gasket. But nonetheless, I guess we'll try and get it spinning over and see if it'll start. Because if it'll start and some of the functions work, it'll be worth putting a head gasket into to repair. So I just got done adding a little bit of water into the radiator just to kind of see if it was low or what the deal with it is. And well, I'll show you guys how that worked. Something tells me we got a leak. Well, upon doing some advanced diagnostics here, I pulled the side cover off, and this loose hose and this loose hose clamp and this trail of coolant coming from it, that's probably where the coolant leak's coming from. Hopefully it's just this. That'd be easy. I'm gonna go ahead and get that tightened back up and try and fill the system up now that we've, you know, lost a good bit on the ground. Well, thanks to the internet, I got a replacement starter for this unit because both of these tractors had the starters missing. I presume they robbed them for some other equipment. So I'm going to go ahead and just toss this starter in this machine and see what happens. You can see I put the starter in there and just kind of guessed on the wiring, but it makes sense in my head. I took a Group 31 out of the ladder truck here, jammed it in there. Apparently it looked like this thing took 2 batteries at one time, but I do not have a key. So I'm just gonna try and do this easy way and jump the starter and see what it does. Are you kidding me? Wow. What? I'm astonished. That's awesome. That was way easier than it should have been. I didn't even go through the fuel system or anything. Incredibly surprised. Although it definitely sounds like it's got a tick. I don't know if that's internally or externally. Looks like we got a fuel leak. I better address that. Now that I know that this thing runs, I really want to try and see if it'll drive. But before I can do that, I think I'm going to have to fix this clutch pedal link, as that's really bent up. Well, this is definitely the best part about having 2 identical tractors. This broken linkage I was able to just pull off the other tractor and get installed over here. So now I got some straight linkage, and we might have to adjust it a little bit. But at least the clutch should function now. Well, maybe it needs a clutch. Well, who needs a manual or anything when you just got 2 tractors? I was curious on where the fuel return line went on these things, and if you just follow over here, it goes right to about the filler neck. So over on this one, the running tractor, this line was just disconnected. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop the hood off this one and reconnect that fuel line, and then we won't have any more fuel leaking. So the return line's hooked back up, but going to the back of the tractor here, there's a dipstick that I believe does the transmission / hydraulic oil. If you can see here. So I'm gonna use some of this leftover oil I had laying around and pop this cap off and toss some oil in, and maybe then at least we'll have some hydraulic function, because right now we have no hydraulic function. As you can see, these lines are in really bad shape, and clearly there's some leaks going on here. Looks like the cylinder's leaking. There's maybe another leak down there. Plenty of leaks. But I want to see if it works, so we'll go ahead and put some fluid in. So I used up all this 20 weight hydraulic oil, this cheap oil that I had. And luckily I didn't use expensive oil, because you can see there's an active leak down here. There's clearly a seal out somewhere around here. Either way, I'm gonna try and fire this thing up again and see if I get any actuation out of the hydraulics here. Something's working. Also, the chattering that this thing's making, I noticed when I revved it up, the chattering got louder. So I figured it has something to do with this. And if you spin the fan here, you can see right there that the fan is hitting the radiator. And so after looking at this one, I realized there is a bracket missing that goes from here up to there. So I'm gonna go ahead and just rob it off of this one and put it on this one, and hopefully that'll fix that chattering. And I'll probably rob these screws as well for the fan shroud. One more thing to fix on here. Well, that sounds a lot better. That fixed the ticking. Well, it's time to give this bad boy a bath here, and there's plenty of grease. Plenty of grease. So hopefully this thing will shine up like a diamond when I'm all done. I'm just going to pressure wash everything. For some reason, I feel like this always happens. So I just washed the tractor, and it's all looking clean now. Yep, that's all engine oil and the coolant. It looks like it just uses coolant to cool the oil filter housing. That must be the oil cooler itself is on that filter housing. So either that's bad and it's dumping coolant into the oil, or the head gasket's bad. So this thing I can probably pop these off and just do a pressure test there and pressure test that and see if it holds. But if not, I'm kind of leaning towards a head gasket because that would make sense as to why this machine was parked. And maybe it's just low on trans fluid and that's why I won't go into gear. I don't know. Plenty of questions here, not a lot of answers, but we only figure things out one day at a time. I will say this machine does look a lot nicer now that it's clean. And yes, we have a oil leak, which I actually thought was over here, but it's probably, oh, look at that. It is there and there. So we got an oil leak on both sides, so that's good. So being that the cooling system is getting filled with engine oil, and the engine oil is obviously low, you can see that straight oil that's going to be at the top of the radiator because oil is lighter than coolant. Coolant's heavier, so it'll settle out to the bottom, whereas the oil will rise to the top. And what happens is when these oil coolers fail, the copper cores will start to break down. I'm assuming that oil is being pumped up right through these lines, getting into the water pump, and then being pushed into the radiator. That's my best guess. If it was a head gasket issue, more commonly it'd be pressurizing the radiator, and also there'd be a lot of smoke. Now, in this case, this tractor does smoke a lot, so it's kind of a toss-up. It could really go either way. First things first, I'm just going to drain the coolant out of this machine into this here bucket. Now you can clearly see the top is filled with oil and the bottom is just coolant dripping out. And like I said, that's because the oil rises to the top as it's lighter than the coolant. Well, I gotta say, this is one of the more impressively redneck things I've done in a while. So I got my knockoff M18 inflator here, and I got that plumbed in to the oil cooler, and I just took a pair of channel locks and clamped them in here. And you know what? Like they say, it ain't stupid if it works, and well, this is working. Unfortunately, it is working. And this oil cooler appears to be holding pressure. It's at 14.5. It's pretty much as soon as I turned that compressor on, it jumped right up to 14.5, just because this loop I have compressed is so small. You really need like a hand pump, like a bicycle or tire inflator, to dial it in. By the way, that is water leaking out. I topped the radiator off with some water over there to try and rinse out any remaining crap that's in there. Unfortunately, this means that the oil cooler is likely not our issue. I also noticed when disconnecting these lines that the coolant in both of these cooler lines appeared to be good and there was no oil in them. So belt-driven water pump, there's probably not a seal back there. So our water pump is likely not our issue. We must have a bad head gasket. Kind of not what I was hoping, but so I guess that sorted itself out. Perhaps if I were to pull this coolant pipe, I would find traces of oil in here. Maybe I can do that and we'll see if any oil comes out, because there shouldn't be any, but my guess is there probably is. So I just removed this coolant pipe from the head. Got a frothy milkshake look in there. So I took the hose and I flushed the system out again with some water to try and clear out all the oil residue that was in here. Now, I didn't use any solvent or anything, just water, but that's okay for now, as I'm still unsure where the problem lies with this. I put a little splash more of oil in there, so it's at an acceptable level to run. And I'll fire this thing up and let it run again and see how quick it starts pushing oil up into the radiator. Well, before I put too much more time into this machine, I do want to see if it drives. So I got more of this cheap, crappy hydraulic fluid, and I got this cheap stuff because it's probably going to end up like that on the ground. Hopefully we can try and put a pan under there and save some of it. But I'm going to go ahead and fill the transmission up and see if that will make this thing drive, because I believe with the power reverser it might have to have enough fluid, but I don't know anything about these, so we're just going to try it out. All right, coming back to you, 5 gallons of hydraulic fluid in the future. So I'm going to set you guys up here, fire this thing up, and I guess let's hope it works. This thing freaking drives. Back at it on the 2150 today. I just picked up some parts from the dealer, and you guys can see here the head gasket was 41 bucks and these O-rings were $8 a piece. These O-rings are for the transmission where it's leaking really badly down there where the draft link arms connect. And then yeah, they only offered one head gasket, one thickness. So hopefully, if we're lucky, we'll be able to get this head off, and this head will still have life left in it to be able to machine. Hopefully it will not be warped or anything, but there's only one way to find out. So I'm gonna get some tools out here and start tearing this thing apart.